HOA Karen gave hunters access to my ranch. They shot my prize bull. There's a sound no rancher should ever wake up to. Not the rooster crowing, not the wind rattling the barn door. A gunshot. I bolted upright in bed, heart pounding like a jackhammer. The sun wasn't even up yet. At first I thought maybe a poacher had gotten brave. Then I looked out my bedroom window. Strangers, 5 of them, camo gear. Rifles marching across my field like it was their God-given right. And right there standing tall and proud, near the fence line, my prize bull Titan. They raised a rifle. They fired, and my world shattered. You ever watch 2,000 pounds of muscle, pride and heritage, drop like a sack of bricks I did that morning? Titan's staggered legs folding beneath him, his black coat shining like polished obsidian, just moments before suddenly streaked with red. I ran out of the house so fast I nearly ripped the screen door off its hinges. Hey, this is private land, didn't even slow them down. One of the men, a tall, skinny guy with mirrored sunglasses, shrugged like it was no big deal. HOA gave us permission. Said we could hunt hogs and deer. On my fenced pasture, these weren't hogs, and that wasn't a deer. That was Titan, 3-time county fair champion. My pride, my family's legacy. Then came the sound I dreaded more than the gunshot. Tires crunching gravel. A white SUV pulled up as shiny and smug as its driver, Karen. Clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched atop her helmet of frosted hair, she stepped out like she was surveying a kingdom she just conquered. Relax, she said, smiling like a crocodile. These gentlemen are performing a community service. Reducing dangerous wildlife. Dangerous wildlife, I spat. That's Titan. My bull. Karen waved her clipboard as if that settled everything. Your bull has been deemed a nuisance by the HOA Wildlife Committee. Spoiler alert, there is no HOA Wildlife Committee. My ranch isn't even under HOA jurisdiction. Never was, but that never stopped Karen. No, ma'am? When rules didn't exist, she just made them up like God handing down commandments. Except Moses didn't carry a clipboard. By now, Titan was lying in the dirt, struggling to breathe. I dropped to my knees beside him. You'll be okay, buddy. Just hold on. But my voice shook. I'd raised him from a calf. We'd won shows together. He wasn't just livestock. He was family. The hunters started getting nervous. Fat guy with a scraggly beard muttered, maybe we should go. Go. Nobody was going anywhere. I pulled out my phone. First call. My vet, Second Sheriff Danvers. Karen stepped forward, lowering her sunglasses. You really want to make this difficult? We're within community rights. You can't stop progress. Progress, I stood up slowly. Lady, the only thing progressing here is your rap sheet. Sirens wailed in the distance. Karen flinched. The hunters looked ready to bolt. I leaned close to her, low enough so only she could hear. You crossed a line today. You didn't just mess with my fences or bylaws. You shot my family. Her smirk faltered. I hope your clipboard's got a line item for criminal trespassing, forged documents, and conspiracy, because the law's coming, and this time you're not going to talk your way out of it. The sheriff's car rounded the corner. Karen backed up, but there was nowhere left to hide. And folks, if you think this was outrageous, just wait until you hear what Karen did next. Trust me, you won't believe how far she went and how it all came crashing down. Stay tuned. By the time Sheriff Danvers rolled up in his cruiser, the sun had fully cleared the treetops, casting harsh, unforgiving light across the field where Titan lay. Danvers was an old-school type. 40 years in the county, knew everyone and everything. More importantly, he didn't take well to fools or clipboard warriors like Karen. He stepped out slow. Taking in the scene, Titan gasping in the dirt, Hunter standing awkwardly by the fence. Me, fists clenched so hard that my knuckles had gone white. Karen, of course, trying to look like the queen of law and order. Morning, Danvers said, though his tone made it sound like no morning he wanted to be part of. What's going on here? Before I could speak, Karen jumped in like a pageant contestant at a microphone. These men, she gestured proudly to the hunters, are performing a necessary wildlife culling as authorized by the HOA's Wildlife Safety Initiative. Danvers raised one bushy eyebrow. Wildlife Safety Initiative? Yes. Karen nodded, clipboard at the ready. There have been numerous complaints, noise smells, unsanitary conditions. I took the liberty of authorizing a limited hunt to mitigate the risks. Danvers didn't blink. And this hunt just so happened to involve a registered, privately owned prize bull. Karen didn't miss a beat. Mistaken identity. These men thought it was a feral bull. Dangerous. I believe they acted responsibly. Responsible. My blood pressure shot so high I thought my ears would pop. Before I could explode, Danvers held up a hand. Let's all take a breath. He walked over to Titan. His hard expression softened just a fraction when he saw the bull's labored breathing. Doc Harris on his way, he asked. Already here, I said, pointing to where Doc's old truck was just kicking up dust down the lane. Danvers nodded. Good. Then he straightened, turning back to Karen. Ma'am, I'll need to see the permit authorizing this hunt. Karen's smile faltered, but only slightly. She dug into her clipboard and produced a crumpled sheet of paper with a bright red HOA stamp here. Danvers took it, held it up to the light. His mouth twitched. This isn't a county permit, it's an HOA permit, Karen said sweetly. Within my jurisdiction, Ma'am Danvers said slowly, HOAs can't authorize hunting, that's state regulated. And last I checked, your HOA's boundary ends 2 properties east of this ranch. Karen's face flushed a deep, dangerous shade of red. Sir, I said, stepping forward, I've got the county plat maps in the house. They'll confirm this ranch has never been under HOA authority. Danvers nodded. Go get them. While I grabbed the paperwork, Doc Harris arrived, sliding out of his truck with his assistant. He didn't bother with pleasantries, went straight to Titan. I need everyone to back up, he barked. This bull's got enough stress without you all looming. The hunters shuffled back suddenly, looking like school kids caught chewing gum in church. Karen didn't move. I said back. Doc snapped without even looking up. Karen huffed but obeyed. I returned with the county records maps. Boundary lines, property deeds, all notarized, signed, sealed. Danvers spread them across the hood of his cruiser. Even the hunters leaned in, probably hoping they'd find some loophole. There wasn't one, this ranch, Danvers said, tracing the lines with a calloused finger, is outside HOA jurisdiction. Always has been. Which means you, ma'am, he leveled his gaze at Karen, have zero authority here. Karen's eyes darted like a cornered raccoon. The community granted me emergency powers to... No, Danvers, cut her off. That's not how the law works. He turned to the hunters. Did any of you verify this permit with the county or the state? Fat Hunter swallowed. Karen said it was all good, Tall Hunter added. She told us the owner had given consent. I shook my head. Rage simmering just beneath the surface. Consent. You trespassed. You shot my bull, Danvers. Exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. All right, here's how this is going to go. I'm seizing that permit as evidence. All firearms are to be surrendered. You gentlemen will remain until we sort this out. The hunters looked like they wanted to melt into the ground. And you, Danvers said, pointing at Karen, are being detained for questioning. Possible charges include trespassing, forgery, criminal mischief, and conspiracy to commit illegal hunting. Karen's jaw dropped so fast I thought it might unhinge. You can't. I'm the HOA president. You were, Danvers said flatly. Right now you're a suspect. By the time deputies arrived to back up, Danvers' news had already started spreading. It's funny how fast folks come out when the mighty fall. Joe, my neighbor, rolled up in his old Ford. Heard the sirens, he said, hopping out. You need me to give a statement? You bet. Other neighbors gathered at the fence line, whispering. A few of Karen's usual followers. Mrs. Tillman, the nosy neighbor who always measured grass height with a ruler, and old Bob, who'd once fined me for leaving a rake out, suddenly looked like they'd never met Karen before in their lives. Doc Harris working steadily while the drama unfolded. After what felt like hours, he came over. He's stable for now. Bullet missed any vital organs, but he's lost a lot of blood. We'll need to transport him to the University Vet Hospital. I nodded, throat tight. Do whatever it takes. Money's no object. Doc patted my shoulder. That's the spirit. As Titan was loaded into the trailer, Karen sat cuffed on the back of a cruiser, ranting about lawyers and wrongful arrests. The hunters surrendered their rifles without protest. Danvers promised me a full report and investigation. But I wasn't waiting. This wasn't just about trespassing or property damage anymore. It was about justice for Titan. For my family's legacy, for every time Karen thought her clipboard made her queen of the county, I was going to take this fight public. And when I was done, Karen wouldn't just lose her HOA title, she'd lose everything. If you think this was wild, wait till you hear what Karen did next. She wasn't done, and neither was I. For the next 2 days, I barely left Titan's side. Doc Harris arranged for a stall at the University Vet Hospital. Titan was hooked up to IV's monitors, beeping softly as his massive frame rose and fell with each shallow breath. I kept thinking back to that morning. The crack of the rifle, the smug look on Karen's face, and those trespassers grinning like they had every right to be there, but they didn't. And soon, the whole county would know it. On the third day, I got a call from Sheriff Danvers. Thought you'd want to know. He said Karen posted bail. Her fancy lawyer pulled some strings. Of course she had. She behaving herself, I asked. Danvers let out a humorless chuckle. Depends on your definition. She's already filed a complaint against me, against the deputies, and get this, even against you. For what? Unlawful imprisonment of her guests. Claims you detained the hunters. I nearly laughed out loud. They were holding rifles on my property. I know. Judge knows. But Karen's spinning the press like a spider on Red Bull. Sure enough, the local news had already started airing Karen's version. Neighborhood heroin faces. False charges. HOA president targets. Dangerous livestock. Problem. One channel even aired a segment where Karen stood outside her house clutching a Bible and blinking back crocodile tears. I only wanted to protect the community. She sniffled. This has all been blown out of proportion by angry men clinging to outdated landowner privileges. Outdated privileges. My jaw clenched so tight I thought my molars might crack. She was painting me as some backward old rancher standing in the way of progress. She had no idea who she was messing with. That night, Joe stopped by the hospital with coffee and an envelope. Thought you might want to see this, he said, dropping the envelope on my lap. Inside were copies of the last 3 HOA meeting. Minutes Joe's cousin was on the board and had quietly passed them along. The minutes detailed Karen's growing wildlife safety initiative. Buried between budget lines and landscaping notes were mentions of managing unregulated livestock and addressing non-compliant rural properties through community action. And then the smoking gun, potential solution for my last name. Ranch authorized access granted to licensed third parties. Minimal board approval required. She had planned this. Weeks in advance, Karen had manipulated the HOA board into thinking they were just signing off on animal control measures. But behind the scenes, she'd coordinated with those hunters, turning a bureaucratic note into a death warrant for Titan. I scanned the signatures. 3 board members had approved the note. 2 of them were longtime Karen loyalists. The third, Mrs. Tillman, the same woman who used to scold kids for riding bikes on the sidewalk. I guess a little HOA power had gone to her head too. By morning, my plan was clear. I wasn't going to fight Karen quietly anymore. It was time to take this public. I called in some favors, contacts from my younger days. See what Karen didn't know was that before I took over the ranch full-time, I'd spent 15 years as a litigation consultant, corporate investigations, fraud public relations, damage control. In other words, I knew how to take down powerful people who thought rules didn't apply to them. I contacted a friend named Valerie, ran a small but mighty PR firm that loved a good David versus Goliath story. Let me guess, Valerie said. Entitled HOA president, thinks she's the queen of the county. Bingo. She didn't even hesitate. Send me the footage, the meeting minutes, every scrap you've got. We're going to win the court of public opinion before you ever step into a courtroom. By that afternoon, Valerie's team had released a carefully edited video to social media, When HOA Power Goes Too Far. The story of Titan. It opened with drone footage of my ranch, peaceful fields, Titan grazing in better days. Then it cut to a narration of the incident, the fake permits, the HOA notes, and a clip from the sheriff confirming the investigation. But the real kicker, neighbors appeared on camera. Joe, Mrs. Simmons, even 2 folks who had once supported Karen, but had since changed their minds. They told the real story about Karen's obsession with control, about how she manipulated the HOA, about the growing fear of speaking up, and then at the end, the video showed Titan in his recovery stall, bandaged, breathing, fighting. This isn't just about one bull, the narrator said. It's about standing up to abuse of power, about protecting what's rightfully yours, about saying enough. By nightfall, the video had over 100,000 views. Comments flooded in, outrage support offers to donate to Titan's care. Even a few folks from other states shared stories about similar HOA bullies and how they'd fought back. The tide was turning. Karen predictably panicked. By morning, her lawyer filed a cease and desist against the video, claimed it was defamatory and misleading. Valerie's response: a polite email citing the truth defense and noting that, in fact, Karen's own public statements were far more defamatory than anything in the video. When that didn't work, Karen tried to double down. She scheduled a press conference, her own right, in front of the HOA clubhouse. I showed up, of course, so did half the neighborhood, and at least 2 news vans. Karen stood at a podium someone had dragged out, flanked by Mrs. Tillman and Bob, the last 2 loyalists who hadn't abandoned ship. She launched into a speech about community values, safety, the real threat posed by non-compliant landowners who refused to modernize. It was the usual word salad, but then she crossed a line. I acted, she declared, because local authorities failed to. The sheriff refused to address the livestock hazard. I stepped up where others would not. Oh, Karen, I thought, you just made a big mistake. Sheriff Danvers had been standing at the back of the crowd. Arms crossed, he stepped forward. That's a lie, ma'am. You never once filed a formal complaint with my office. You acted alone illegally. Karen's face blanched, and then the second blow hit. Joe walked up beside me, holding a USB stick, the rest of the HOA meeting. Minutes, he announced loudly. For anyone who wants to see how this whole plan was cooked up. A reporter took the drive immediately. Karen's podium wobbled. Literally, one of the legs gave out. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Within hours, the local news aired a new headline. HOA President's Plot, Exposed Unauthorized Hunting Scheme, Unravels. That night, as the sun set and I returned to Titan's stall, I felt the weight lift, just a little. We weren't done yet. Court still loomed. Karen's lawyers were going to fight tooth and nail, but the court of public opinion. We'd already won, and I wasn't stopping now. If you think this was wild, wait till you hear what Karen tried next. If I thought Karen was going to retreat quietly after her public humiliation at the press conference, I severely underestimated her carefulness. The very next morning, I got served not just any paperwork, a lawsuit filed against me. The stack of documents was 2 inches thick, printed on the cheapest copy paper, but wrapped in the most expensive legal jargon her attorney could muster. Defamation, harassment, loss of reputation, emotional distress. She even accused me of creating a dangerous public narrative that was putting her family's safety at risk, the final kicker. She claimed $500,000 in damages. I stood in my kitchen, coffee going cold, staring at the ridiculous claim. Karen wasn't just fighting back. She was trying to bankrupt me. Classic Karen strategy. If you can't win the moral battle, bleed your opponent dry in court. I called my lawyer a sharp-tongued woman named Grace Whitaker. She reviewed the papers without so much as blinking. This is what we call a slap suit, she said, flipping through the pages. Slap strategic lawsuit against public participation. Rich bullies use them to silence critics. Expensive. Annoying but usually flimsy. Grace smiled a wolfish grin. And this one's so flimsy it might fall apart in a strong breeze. Still, I wasn't taking chances. We filed an anti-slap motion, immediately countersuing for harassment and abuse of the legal process. But Karen wasn't done. She took to Facebook, Nextdoor, and even the local church, bulletin painting herself as the real victim. I have endured relentless attacks, false accusations, and dangerous rhetoric. My only crime, caring too much. Some folks bought it, not many, but enough to stir the pot. About a week later, the anonymous threats started. Phone calls at all hours. Emails saying things like, maybe you should sell the ranch before it burns. Handwritten notes stuffed in my mailbox with phrases like, justice for Karen, and bulls are dangerous. You should be grateful. Grateful, my blood boiled. Whoever was behind this was either a coward or being led by one. My guess, Karen had stirred up a few loyal lapdogs who couldn't accept that their queen was falling. I installed more cameras, motion lights, even a few decoy signs that said 24-hour surveillance. Police monitored. Sheriff Danvers was already investigating the threats and quietly had patrol cars swing by my property twice a night. But even with all the precautions, I slept lightly, real lightly. Meanwhile, Titan kept healing. Each day he grew steadier on his feet. Doc Harris marveled at his resilience. I've seen bulls come back from gunshot wounds, he said, but none with this much fight. The community fight grew too. The neighbors who once whispered behind curtains now spoke openly. Joe organized a petition calling for Karen's removal from the HOA entirely. Not just as president, but as a resident in good standing. State law made it tough. But if enough homeowners signed, the HOA could vote to censure her and recommend expulsion from the subdivision. Within 4 days, 82% of the homeowners had signed. That was practically a revolution in HOA terms. Karen retaliated by claiming voter fraud. She even hired a private investigator to audit the signatures. But here's where things got interesting, the private investigator. A man named Ron Becker. And Ron used to work with me back in my litigation days. He showed up at my ranch one evening, hat in hand, a sheepish grin on his face. Didn't know it was your case when I took the job, he said. But the moment I recognized your name, I did a little extra digging. He handed me a USB drive. The drive contained emails between Karen and a small group of her inner circle, including Mrs. Tillman and Bob. They discussed planting false complaints against me, coordinating the threats to apply pressure, faking property damage to pin on my reckless animals. And most damning of all, an email where Karen wrote, "If we can't bankrupt him in court, maybe the bank will call in that second mortgage of his. No one survives legal fees and foreclosure." Ron smiled. "I've already forwarded these to the sheriff and your lawyer. Thought you'd want a copy for yourself." I nearly hugged him. Grace filed a motion to introduce the emails into evidence. Sheriff Danvers opened a criminal conspiracy investigation. Suddenly, Karen wasn't just facing civil damages. She was looking at felony charges. The next HOA meeting wasn't scheduled for another week, but the crowd gathered early. People packed into the clubhouse like sardines. Even folks who usually never attended HOA meetings showed up curious to see the spectacle. Karen tried to put on a brave face. Her lipstick was perfect. Her pearls gleamed, but her eyes darted nervously toward the door every few seconds. The moment Grace and I entered the room, hushed, Joe followed behind us holding a folder full of the petition signatures. Danvers came too, not in uniform, but everyone knew exactly why he was there. Karen tried to call the meeting to order, but Bob stood up. "Madam President," he said loudly, "I move that we skip to new business." Karen tried to object. "Mrs. Simmons." "Yes." Mrs. Simmons interrupted. "I second the motion." The crowd murmured agreement. Bob continued. "We have reason to believe the current president engaged in criminal acts against a fellow homeowner. I motion for immediate suspension, pending legal review." Karen's jaw dropped. "This is illegal." "You can't." "Yes, we can." It was Mrs. Tillman. Her voice was firm. I blinked. The same woman who had once stood beside Karen now stood against her. "I didn't sign up for this madness," she said. "I believed your lies once, I won't again." The vote was swift. Out of 87 eligible homeowners, 72 voted to suspend Karen immediately. Bob announced the result. Karen screamed that the vote was rigged, invalid, unconstitutional, but no one listened. Danvers stepped forward, unfolded a piece of paper, and read aloud, "Karen Carter, you are hereby notified that a criminal investigation has been opened against you for conspiracy to commit fraud, harassment, and intimidation." Karen's knees buckled. Her lawyer standing nearby grabbed her elbow. "I recommend you stop talking," he whispered sharply. "But it was too late," she shrieked. "You're all going to regret this when the real authorities hear about Danvers." Cut her off. "Ma'am, we are the real authorities." The crowd erupted in applause, not polite clapping. Thunderous neighbors cheered. Some hugged. A few folks even cried. After months of intimidation and fear, justice was finally taking shape. Karen was escorted out of the meeting by her own attorney, her face pale, her power crumbling like a sandcastle at high tide. The same people who once cowered before her now watched in relief and a little satisfaction as she disappeared into the night. But me, I wasn't celebrating yet. I leaned toward Grace and whispered, "We still have a court battle." She nodded. "Yes, but we just won the war of public opinion. The rest is cleanup." As I left the meeting, Joe clapped me on the back. "You did it, partner." "No," I said, glancing toward the dark pasture where Titan would soon return. "We did. If you think this was satisfying, just wait until the courtroom showdown. That's where Karen's entire empire finally collapses." I wasn't nervous the morning of the court date. Not even a little. Karen, on the other hand, looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Her expensive blazer couldn't hide the bags under her eyes. She kept fidgeting with her necklace, a nervous tick. I'd noticed back during the HOA meetings, her lawyer, a slick guy named Morgan Pike, tried to whisper reassurances, but even he looked like a man walking a client straight into a buzzsaw. The gallery was packed. Neighbors, reporters, even a couple of county officials sat in the back. But my eyes only sought out one thing. Titan's vet, Doc Harris, sitting quietly near the front. He nodded once when I caught his eye. Titan was recovering well enough now to graze in the pasture again. That thought gave me the strength to face whatever came next. Judge Wilcox, a woman in her 60s with no patience for nonsense, took her seat. "Gentlemen, ladies, let's begin." Karen's side went first. Her lawyer laid it on thick. Karen was a community leader. She had acted out of concern for safety. She had no malicious intent, and the real villain me for stirring up a public frenzy and manipulating neighbors with doctored footage. Judge Wilcox didn't blink. "Do you have proof of video tampering, Mr. Pike?" Pike stammered something about digital inconsistencies. Wilcox raised an eyebrow. "That's a no." Then it was Grace's turn. And folks, she owned that courtroom. First, she laid out the basics: trespassing, property damage, endangerment, conspiracy. Then came the parade of evidence: Security footage of Karen handing out maps, emails from Karen instructing hunters to target my ranch, witness testimonies including Joe, Mrs. Simmons, and even one of the hunters who flipped sides after realizing Karen had set them all up. Then Grace called Doc Harris. He testified about Titan's injury, the medical costs, the suffering. When he described how close Titan came to death, even a few folks in the gallery wiped their eyes. Finally, Grace dropped the hammer. A forensic eye expert. He confirmed the videos were 100% authentic. No tampering, no doctoring. What's more, he added, the metadata confirms they were recorded weeks before any public accusations began. Game, set, match. Karen's lawyer tried one last trick, blaming the hunters entirely. They acted independently, Pike argued. My client cannot be held liable for their reckless behavior. Grace was ready. She pulled out the signed hunting permits Karen had forged Karen's signature. Her handwriting, her HOA title printed boldly. Reckless behavior. Grace said no. It was a coordinated scheme, and my client nearly lost his prize animal and his livelihood because of it. The courtroom went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Judge Wilcox folded her hands. I've seen enough, she turned to Karen. Mrs. Carter, this court finds you personally liable for trespass, forgery, fraud, conspiracy, and malicious endangerment. Civil damages are awarded in the amount of $475,000 to Mr. Daniels. Karen gasped audibly. Her lawyer closed his eyes like he'd just accepted his fate, but the judge wasn't done. Furthermore, Mrs. Carter, I am referring this case to the district attorney for possible criminal prosecution. You are hereby barred from serving in any community leadership position for 10 years. Then she addressed the HOA president, Bob, who was sitting in the front row. I strongly suggest your organization reviews its bylaws to prevent abuse of authority in the future. Bob nodded so fast he nearly fell out of his chair, Karen. She stood frozen, face pale mouth working like she wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Grace packed up our files, calm as ever. It's over, she whispered. I looked toward the gallery where Joe gave me a thumbs up. Mrs. Simmons dabbed at her eyes. Even a few reporters nodded in approval. Outside the courthouse, cameras swarmed. A young reporter shoved a mic toward me. Mr. Daniels, any comment? I kept it simple. Justice may be slow. I said, but it shows up eventually. As I headed to my truck, Karen stormed past, shoving cameras aside. Her lawyer trailed behind, looking like a man rethinking his career choices. Karen stopped at my truck, finger jabbing the air. This isn't over, she hissed. You think you've won? I'll appeal out? Sheriff Danvers appeared at her side, a quiet tower of authority. Ma'am, you might want to speak to your criminal attorney next. Not this man. Karen's face crumpled. She turned on her heel and fled to her car. I climbed into my truck and took a deep breath. Titan was waiting back at the ranch. The land was safe. The lies were exposed, and Karen was finished. If you thought that was satisfying, just wait. I'll show you how the community rebuilt and the powerful lesson Karen left behind. You won't want to miss it, but when it arrives, it leaves footprints. And Karen, she was buried under them. The months after the verdict were some of the best and busiest of my life. The money from the settlement didn't just go to patching up the ranch. I had a bigger plan. First, Titan's full medical bills were paid, and with Doc Harris's blessing, I invested in a brand new veterinary shelter wing at the county animal hospital with Titan's name on the plaque, the Titan Recovery Center. It wasn't just for prize bulls, it was for any rancher's livestock hurt by carelessness, cruelty, or negligence. Then came the fences, not just repaired, reinforced with new signage, clear, bold and beneath in smaller letters, no HOA permissions accepted. The ranch flourished, Titan healed. His strength returned. He even sired a healthy calf, a little black bull with his father's proud stance and stubborn streak. I named him Justice, seemed fitting. But the real change that happened with the people, neighbors who'd once been too scared to stand up to Karen, now stepped forward with fresh energy. We rewrote the HOA bylaws. No more unchecked power, no more secret committees, and certainly no more self-appointed hunting authorizations. We elected a new board fair, transparent, focused on real community improvement, not Karen's ego. For the first time in years, people trusted their neighborhood leadership. And Karen, she sold her house at a loss and moved 3 states away. Her name became a cautionary tale whispered at HOA meetings everywhere. Don't pull a Karen. One evening about 6 months after the trial, we held a community barbecue. No formal flyers, no forced donations, just good food, Good people and kids running barefoot through the grass. At sunset, I stood by Titan's paddock sipping sweet tea, watching as folks mingled and laughed. Mrs. Simmons sidled up beside me. You know, she said, Karen thought she was building power. I nodded, and all she really built was unity, I replied. Against her, we shared a quiet laugh as the sky turned purple and the first stars blinked awake. Joe raised his glass. To Titan, to standing your ground. And to neighbors who finally got it right. Cheers rang out. Titan even gave a proud snort from the field as if he approved lessons for every HOA. Abuse of power thrives on silence. If you see manipulation or bullying in your HOA, speak up early. Don't wait until someone gets hurt. Keep records. Always emails, meeting notes, security footage. In today's world, evidence wins battles. Community is stronger than control. Real leadership builds trust, not fear. If your HOA feels like a dictatorship, it's time for change. Don't underestimate the quiet ones. Karen thought she could steamroll me. She forgot that ranchers, veterans, and old-school Americans don't back down easy. Justice may come late, but it comes. And when it does, it doesn't just fix the wrongs, it prevents the next ones. Call to action. If you've ever dealt with an HOA tyrant like Karen, or if you just love a story where the little guy and his bull win big, drop a comment below. Have you faced unfair HOA rules? What's your Karen story? Let's hear them. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life tales of standing your ground and winning. Because sometimes the fence isn't just to keep people out, it's to protect what matters inside.